I live alone in a small apartment just outside of Chicago. It's not a sketchy area, but not the safest either. I've always been extra cautious. I double lock my doors, keep pepper spray on my keys, even have a small camera facing my front door. Not because I've ever had anything bad happen to me, but because I know how fast things can go bad when you're alone. One night in February, around 10:15 p.m., I ordered Thai food through a popular delivery app. I remember the exact time because I was halfway through a documentary and wanted to finish it before bed. The delivery instructions on my profile say to call my number instead of buzzing, because the intercom in my building is broken half the time. Most drivers follow that just fine. I got the usual notification. Your driver is arriving soon. Then, your driver has arrived. About 30 seconds later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, not the in-app call, which was odd. But it didn't raise red flags at the time. I figured the driver was just calling from his own number. I answered. A man's voice said, "Hey, I'm downstairs with your food." His voice was flat. No background noise, no restaurant sounds. But again, nothing crazy enough to alarm me. I said thanks, and as usual, I went over to the front door and used the app to unlock the building door from my phone. A minute later, I heard knocking. 3 light taps. No doorbell, just a soft, rhythmic knock at my apartment door. I opened it. That's when everything in my body screamed something was wrong. Standing there was a tall man in a gray hoodie and a black coat, pulled up tight around his face. He was holding a plastic bag, not the kind food comes in, but the kind you'd get from a cheap gas station. I didn't see a restaurant logo, a receipt, nothing. But what got me most was how off his smile was. Like he was trying to act normal, but didn't know how. He didn't say hi. He just held out the bag slowly. I instinctively reached for it, and that's when he jerked it back. I froze. Then he spoke, still smiling. "Actually, can I come in for a second? It's freezing out here." His tone didn't match his face. His eyes didn't match his voice. Nothing about this made sense. I said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't let you in." There was a pause. Not long, maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like forever. Then he tilted his head and said, "You're smart," and turned around. He didn't leave. He didn't head for the stairs. He walked across the hallway and stood in front of my neighbor's door. He just stood there for a full minute, then slowly walked down the stairs out of view. I slammed my door shut, locked everything, heart racing. Then I got another call. This time, it was from the delivery app. My actual driver. "Hey, I'm outside. Just tried calling, but the app said you already answered." I told him someone else had just come to my door pretending to be him. He got quiet. "Wait, was he wearing a hoodie and a black coat?" I said yes. "Yeah, I've seen him. That dude's not a driver. He's always hanging around the back parking lot near the dumpster. He's weird." I hung up and called 911. Officers showed up about 20 minutes later. I told them everything, the call, the knock, the man's behavior. They searched the building but didn't find him. However, one of the officers asked if I'd been to the basement recently. I said no, I never go down there. Laundry creeps me out. He said they found marks on the outside of the stairwell window, like someone had used something to try and pry it open. Then he showed me a small black folding knife they'd found tucked behind a pipe under the laundry sink. I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if I let that guy in. But it didn't end there. 3 weeks later, my neighbor, a single mom with a 7-year-old, knocked on my door. She looked freaked out and was holding her phone. "Hey, is this the guy you were talking about?" She showed me a still from her security cam, one she installed after my incident. The footage showed the exact same man, same hoodie, standing at her door. 1:43 a.m. He didn't knock. He didn't move. He just stood there staring at the peephole. And then, just before he left, he waved. Now here's where it gets worse. A few nights after that, I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard something tap my bedroom window. I'm on the 2nd floor. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Eventually it stopped. I reported it again. Cops said there were smudges on the glass, but no fingerprints. Almost like someone had been wearing gloves. To this day, I still don't know who he was, what he wanted, or how long he'd been watching the building. I never found out how he got my number. The delivery app said the original call didn't come from their system. I installed 3 new locks, security cams, motion lights, but I still sleep with one eye open. And every now and then, just once every few months, I'll get a knock at the door, 3 short taps, No voice. Just silence, waiting to see if I'll open it again. My name is Kayla, and last summer I agreed to house sit for my aunt while she was away in Europe for 2 weeks. She's a travel photographer and spends more time out of the country than in it, so she was thrilled when I said I'd stay at her place and watch her dog while she was gone. The house was beautiful, big, older 2-story home in a quiet Colorado neighborhood, backed up against a patch of forest. It felt like a little vacation at first. I just finished a stressful semester in grad school and figured this would be the perfect way to decompress. Free house, free food, Wi-Fi, and a golden retriever named Max to keep me company. The first few days were uneventful. I watched a ton of movies, read on the back deck, took Max for long walks. The house was quiet, with these old wooden floors that creaked with every step. There was a comforting stillness to it until the 4th night. That's when things started feeling wrong. I remember it clearly. I was lying in bed around midnight, scrolling on my phone with Max curled up at my feet. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I stepped into the hallway, I noticed a faint glow on the ceiling. It was coming from the attic hatch, this square panel set into the ceiling above the 2nd floor hallway. It had a narrow trim of light around the edges, like there was a light on just behind it. Here's the thing, the attic didn't have a light. My aunt told me before she left that she never used the attic. Said it was just old insulation and spiderwebs. No reason to go up there. I stood there staring at that thin glow for a solid minute. Max was growling behind me, low and soft. I wanted to believe I had just never noticed it before, that maybe some electrical quirk had turned on a light that was wired decades ago. But something about it didn't feel right. The next morning, I grabbed a chair and got a closer look at the panel. There was no pull string, no latch. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Dust coated the edges, and when I touched it, the panel didn't budge. That night, the light came back. I woke up to Max whining at the door. I got up, cracked the bedroom door open, and sure enough, the attic hatch was glowing again. But now it wasn't just glowing. It was cracked open. A sliver of shadow spilled into the hallway, and something moved. Not fast, not loud, just a soft, slow thud. Then another, like someone crawling. I shut the door immediately and locked it. Max was trembling. I didn't sleep that night, just sat with a kitchen knife in my hand, eyes on the door. The next day I called my aunt. I tried to keep my voice calm, asked her again if she had ever been in the attic. She paused, then said, "No, not since I bought the house." "Why?" I told her about the light, about the movement. She didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off. Instead, she whispered, "Kayla, the attic doesn't have power. There's no light up there. None." I asked her if she thought someone could be living up there. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "The last tenant before me left in the middle of the night. Said she heard voices in the ceiling." I thought she was just unstable. That was all I needed to hear. I called a locksmith and had him add a second lock to my bedroom door. That night, I stayed up waiting. Max slept next to me, ears twitching every time the floor creaked. At 2:14 a.m., I heard something fall. Something heavy. I grabbed my phone and turned on the camera, slowly cracking my door open just enough to see the hallway. The attic panel was completely open, just hanging there, and something was standing in the hallway, pale, thin, hunched. It was barefoot, and its head was tilted like it was listening for something. It wasn't just some vagrant. Its limbs were too long, its shoulders wrong, like it had been altered by being up there too long. It slowly turned its head toward me. I ducked back in and slammed the door, locking both bolts. It walked up to the door, stopped, then whispered, "You left it open." I never screamed so hard in my life. Called the cops. They didn't find anyone, but they did find a nest in the attic. Old food wrappers, a camera, a sleeping bag, pages torn from books, and carvings on the attic walls, hundreds of little scratch marks, forming a single phrase over and over. Under the roof, behind the eyes. I left that night. Haven't seen my aunt since she moved out. She sold the house 2 months later. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I see that light again, right on the ceiling above my bed. My name's Mark. This happened just last year, mid-January. I rented a small off-grid cabin deep in the Montana wilderness to get away from work stress. My therapist called it a mental reset. No phone, no internet, no people. Just snow, silence, and time to clear my head. I booked 2 weeks. The cabin was old school. 1 room. Wood stove. Propane lamps. The nearest neighbor was supposedly 3 miles away. There was a trail, but it was buried under 3 feet of snow within the first day. Exactly what I wanted. The first 3 days were peaceful. I chopped wood, cooked over a small burner, read old books I found on the shelves. At night, I sat by the fire and just listened to the wind through the trees. But by night 4, something shifted. It started with a knock. Not on the front door, on the back wall, right behind where I sat reading. It was a firm, solid knock. 2 quick taps. I froze. Looked out the window. Nothing. I grabbed the flashlight and walked around the cabin. No tracks. No animals. No wind damage. I told myself it was just the cabin settling. The next night, it happened again. Same knock. Same spot. Knock, knock. This time, I responded. I walked to the back wall, tapped twice with my knuckle. For a full minute, nothing. Then, from the front door. I didn't open it. I didn't even move. I just stood there, heart pounding, staring at the door like it would explode open. Eventually, I convinced myself someone was messing with me. Maybe a lost hiker, or some creepy mountain local trying to scare the outsider. But again, no footprints. No sound of retreat. Just the knock. By the 7th night, I was sleeping with my axe next to the bed. I'd boarded the windows and locked the door with a shovel braced across the frame. Then the knocking changed. It started on the roof. 2 knocks. Then on the wall. Then the opposite wall. Then the window. Like something was circling me. Testing the walls. I was too scared to move. Just sat by the fire, axe in hand, listening to it go around, and then stop above the bedroom. The next morning, I went outside, found nothing. But I noticed something carved into the snow by the back door. 2 circles. And a line underneath. A crude face. Smiling. The knocking didn't stop. Every night, same pattern. But on the 10th night, something new happened. It knocked twice, and then said my name. I was sitting at the table when it happened. It sounded like a woman, but the voice wasn't right, like it had been rehearsed. Croaky and flat. "Mark, let me in." I said nothing. Then it said it again, and again, each time more frantic, like it couldn't understand why I wasn't responding. The fire started to dim. I saw the handle of the door twist, even though I had it bolted shut from the inside. Then came the last thing I'll never forget. It whispered, "You talked to me. That means I can come in now." It wasn't a woman's voice anymore. It sounded like me. Same tone. Same exact cadence I used when I answered the knock on night 2. I barely remember grabbing the axe. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor until sunrise. When the light came, I packed everything and started hiking down the mountain through waist-deep snow. I made it 2 miles before a snowplow found me. I told the police someone had been stalking the cabin. They searched it top to bottom, found no signs of forced entry, no prints. But they found one thing inside the bedroom wall. There was a hollow space. Something had been living inside the wall, between the insulation and the boards. And scratched into the wood, hundreds of times, was one phrase. 2 knocks to speak. 2 knocks to enter. I don't stay alone anymore. I don't go off-grid. And every time I hear a knock on my door, I wait to see if there's a second one. My name is Trent, and I swear to God, if you're watching or listening to this, don't be like me. Don't chase a thrill you don't understand. And above all, don't mess with a challenge that has rules. Because once you break one, it follows you. It all started with a group chat. Me and 3 of my friends, Drew, Mikey, and Rob, we've always been into horror stuff. Movies, dares, urban legends. That kind of thing. So when Rob found this post on a deep horror subreddit called Dead Minutes, we were all in. It was titled, "The 303 Door Challenge, Do Not Play." We laughed, obviously. According to the post, you had to do it alone in your own house. The ritual had 3 steps. 1. Write your full name on a sheet of paper and place it under your welcome mat. 2. Turn off all lights in your house at 3 a.m. sharp. 3. At 3:03, there would be a knock at your front door. Do not open it. Do not speak. Do not move. If you stay silent and still until 3:13 a.m., the visitor will leave. You win. If you break the rules, something else enters. And it doesn't leave. We dared each other to do it. 1 night each. Document it. Text the group when it was over. Rob went first. He joked the whole time. Said the knock happened, freaked him out, but he didn't open the door. Made it to 313, no problem. He even sent us a video of him flipping the bird at the door, whispering, "Nice try, demon." Mikey went next. He said he didn't hear any knock, just silence. Felt like nothing happened. We figured it was all made up. Then it was my night. I followed the steps. Name under the mat. Lights off at exactly 3 a.m. I sat in the dark on the couch, phone face down. Just waiting. At 3:03 a.m. exactly. 3 knocks. They were hard. Like someone pounding with their fist. It echoed through the whole house. I didn't move. 10 minutes never felt so long in my life. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. Slow. Like something was leaning against it. At 3:13, the breathing stopped. I didn't dare move until 3:20. I turned the lights back on. Opened the door. The paper with my name was gone. Nothing was there. I texted the group chat. Done. That was intense. But Mikey never replied. Not that night. Not the next day. We figured he was messing with us. Or sleeping it off. But 2 days passed and nothing. We drove to his place. His car was there. Door locked. Lights off. No answer. Drew had a spare key from a past project. We let ourselves in. The place was spotless. No signs of a struggle. Except for one thing. In the living room, drawn in red crayon on the white wall, were the words. I peeked. There were no signs of Mikey. No clothes missing. No phone. Just gone. We called the cops. They filed a report. No forced entry. No explanation. And that's when we got the second message. It came from Mikey's number. Just one text. "You're next, Trent." At first, I thought it was Rob messing with me. But he swore he hadn't texted anyone. He even looked pale as hell when I showed him the message. Then I got a knock on my door. At 2:45 p.m. Middle of the day. Bright outside. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. Then another knock. But this time from the back door. My back door doesn't even have a porch. Just dirt and a fence. I ran through the house and yanked the blinds open. No one. But the door handle was twitching. Like someone was barely touching it. Just enough to make it jiggle. Over and over. I bolted every door and window. Slept in my car with the engine running. And I didn't go back inside until the next morning. That night, I found something under my windshield wiper. A sheet of paper. It just said, "You opened the door when you told someone. Now it knows your name." I tried to burn it. The flames wouldn't catch. It crumpled, but it wouldn't tear. I ended up burying it miles from home. Then I got a video from an unknown number. It was grainy footage. Dark. Looked like it was from my living room. Me. Sitting on the couch. From behind. In real time. Except I wasn't there. I was at Drew's when it came through. The video had no timestamp. But it ended with my front door slowly creaking open, and a pale hand wrapping around the doorframe. That night, Drew crashed on my couch. Said we'd get through it. He didn't wake up. His body was still there, lying stiff as a board. No marks. No wounds. Just gone inside. Eyes open, mouth stretched in a silent scream. The medical examiner said it was a cardiac event. Bull. Drew was 25. No history. And his body was ice cold, like he'd been dead for hours. I left town after that. Got rid of my phone. Changed my name. Even stayed off the internet. Moved across the country. I thought maybe it was tied to the house. But now, I hear it again. Every night at 3:03, I hear the knock. No matter where I stay. Motel, friend's place, even once in a car on the side of a highway. Always 3 knocks. Always the same time. Sometimes, I hear my name whispered from outside the window. Or I wake up to see handprints on the inside of the glass, facing inward. And sometimes, I wake up holding a crayon. Red. I don't know what this thing is. But it's patient. It waits. And it follows. So listen to me. If you ever hear a challenge like this, don't take it. Not for a dare. Not for a thrill. Not for a video. Because once it knows your name, it doesn't knock to come in. It knocks so you'll answer. I used to live alone in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building in Pittsburgh. It was a decent place, quiet, affordable, and close to my job. But the weirdest part about the apartment wasn't inside it. It was across the courtyard, in the unit directly facing mine. From my living room window, I had a perfect view of the neighboring apartment's living room. At first, I never really paid attention to it. But after a while, I started noticing something strange. Every night, around 1 a.m., a man would appear at the window. He never turned on a light. He never moved much. He would just stand there, staring out the window into the darkness. Or maybe at me. At first I thought it was just a weird coincidence. I figured he liked staring at the night sky or something. But as the nights went on, I realized it was too consistent. Same time, same place, same posture. He never sat down, never had his phone out, never even blinked. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, but something about his silhouette creeped me out. He was tall, very thin, and had this weird way of standing perfectly still like a mannequin. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I waited until 1 a.m., turned off all the lights in my apartment, and sat in the dark watching his window. And right on cue, he appeared. But this time something changed. His head slowly tilted upward, as if he knew I was watching him. I froze. The way he moved, it didn't feel natural. It was too smooth, too precise, like his neck had no resistance. I got up and walked away from the window. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I decided to report it to the building manager. Not as a complaint, just to ask if someone lived there. Maybe it was a vacant unit and someone was squatting. But when I brought it up, the manager gave me a confused look. "Nobody's rented that apartment for months," she said. "Last tenant moved out in May." Why? My stomach dropped. I went back to my place and waited until the sun went down. Around 11 p.m., I turned off the lights again and sat on the couch, staring across the courtyard. And at 1 a.m., like clockwork, he showed up. Only this time, his head was already tilted up, staring straight at me. I slammed the blinds shut. The next day, I called the police. 2 officers came by that evening, and I explained everything. They went to the unit across the courtyard to check it out. I watched from my window as they entered. They were inside for maybe 5 minutes before coming back out and knocking on my door. "There's nobody in that unit," one of them said. Door was locked. Windows too. Place is empty, no furniture, no signs of entry. I asked if they saw any footprints or evidence someone had been standing at the window. They just shrugged and said, "Nope. Floor's dusty as hell. No prints at all." They left shortly after, and I stood there in the middle of my apartment, completely unnerved. That night, I didn't plan to look out the window. I tried to sleep early, but something woke me up, this weird, static-like buzzing in my ears. Like TV white noise, but distant and low. I sat up, heart pounding. My clock said 12:58 a.m. I didn't want to check. I told myself not to, but I did. And when I peeked through the blinds, he was in my apartment, standing just a few feet from me. His face didn't look right. It was smooth, like it hadn't finished forming. No nose. A slit of a mouth. Deep, sunken eye sockets with nothing inside. He didn't move. Didn't speak. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off him. And then he did something I'll never forget. He raised one long, bony finger and pointed at me. I ran. Straight out of the apartment. I didn't stop until I was outside on the street. I stayed at a friend's place for a week after that. When I came back with movers to grab my stuff, nothing was out of place. No signs of a break-in. But there, on the inside of my living room window, written in the dust with a finger, were 3 words. "You saw me." I broke the lease and never looked back. I still don't sleep near windows. And I never, ever look out after midnight. Because once you see him, he never stops watching. When Jason booked a weekend getaway in the middle of nowhere, he thought it would be the perfect way to disconnect from the pressures of city life. A remote cabin, nestled deep in the woods, sounded like the ideal place to relax and recharge. His friends had warned him that it might be too isolated, but he shrugged it off. He wanted peace, after all. A weekend to himself, with no distractions. The cabin was more rustic than he expected, with creaky wooden floors and a fireplace that seemed to be the only source of warmth. But it had everything he needed, a bed, a kitchen, and a couple of chairs to sit in by the fire. He unpacked his things, settled in, and enjoyed a quiet evening, reading a book he had brought with him. The first night was uneventful, and Jason slept soundly, the crackling of the fire lulling him into a deep sleep. But the next morning, when he woke up, something felt off. There was a strange coldness in the air, despite the fire still burning in the fireplace. He shook it off, thinking it was just the early morning chill. Jason spent the day exploring the area around the cabin. He walked through the woods, enjoying the fresh air and the peaceful solitude. But as the sun began to set, he noticed something strange, a faint light flickering in the distance. It wasn't coming from another cabin, as he'd thought at first, but rather from deeper in the woods. It was too far to make out clearly, but it looked like a candle or a lantern. Curious, Jason made his way toward the light, figuring he'd find some other hiker or camper. As he walked, the light seemed to flicker and move, almost as if it was beckoning him forward. The air grew colder the closer he got, and a strange feeling of unease crept over him. He had never been afraid of the woods before, but something about this place felt different. The trees were thick, their branches reaching out like dark fingers, blocking the light of the setting sun. By the time he reached the source of the light, he found nothing. The woods were silent, and the light had disappeared. Jason stood there for a moment, confused and a little frustrated. There was no sign of anyone, just an empty patch of ground and the darkening trees. He made his way back to the cabin, but as he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. Every so often, he'd hear a twig snap behind him, or the rustling of leaves, but when he turned around, there was nothing there. Back in the cabin, Jason tried to relax, but the strange feeling persisted. He lit the fireplace, poured himself a drink, and sat down in the chair. The wind began to howl outside, rattling the windows, and the fire crackled loudly in the silence. Jason pulled the blanket tighter around him, trying to ignore the creeping sense of dread that had settled in his chest. As the night went on, the sounds outside grew louder. It wasn't just the wind anymore. He could hear footsteps, dragging noises, and what sounded like whispers. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but the sounds were so distinct that they couldn't be ignored. He grabbed the flashlight and walked over to the door, peering through the small window. The woods outside were pitch black, the trees swaying in the wind, but there was no sign of anything unusual. Jason tried to convince himself that he was just spooked by the isolation. It was late, and his mind was playing tricks on him. But as he turned to head back to his seat, he saw it. In the corner of the room, by the fireplace, there was a figure standing just out of the light's reach. It was tall, too tall and thin, with limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally. Jason froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching him. For a moment, Jason couldn't breathe. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Was it a person? Or something else? The air around him grew colder, and the figure slowly began to step into the light. Its face was pale and featureless, like a mask of smooth white skin, with hollow, empty eyes. It didn't have a mouth, but Jason could hear a soft whispering coming from it, a language he couldn't understand. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, as the figure took another step forward. Jason couldn't move. His legs felt like they were frozen to the floor, his body refusing to obey his commands. The figure raised its hand, long fingers curling in the air like it was reaching for something, or someone. Without thinking, Jason bolted for the door. He flung it open and ran into the night, not looking back. The woods were dark, the trees looming like twisted shapes in the shadows. He could hear the whispers behind him, getting closer and closer. The cold air bit into his skin as he ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He didn't stop to look back. He didn't dare. The whispers were growing louder now, right behind him, but he couldn't see anything in the darkness. He could feel the presence, though the cold, oppressive weight of it closing in. Eventually, Jason stumbled into a clearing, his legs giving out from exhaustion. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. The whispering had stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. But then he heard it, soft, almost imperceptible at first, but unmistakable. A voice whispering his name. Jason. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness. There, standing in the shadows of the trees, was the figure. It was closer now, its pale face illuminated by the moonlight. Its mouth was open, stretching impossibly wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. And then it spoke again. I've been waiting. I moved into Snowbridge Heights last November, a small, quiet neighborhood upstate, only about 30 homes, all spread out across rolling hills blanketed with pine trees. Every house looked like it belonged on a postcard, snow-covered roofs, warm porch lights, smoke curling up from brick chimneys. It was exactly what I needed after my divorce. Peace, distance, quiet. The neighbors were friendly enough, though a little strange. There was Walter, the old man across the street, who never left his house but watched from the window all day. Miss Darlene next door baked cookies weekly, but never looked you in the eye. And then there was that house on the far end of the street, the dark one with the blackout curtains and no car in the driveway. Everyone called it number 19, like it was cursed. It started snowing heavy in mid-December, and that's when things got weird. One morning, I stepped outside to grab my mail and noticed something unusual. Footprints. Dozens of them. Bare feet, small, human, child-sized, marching across my yard in random directions. No shoe prints. No boot tracks. Just a mess of little footprints, and no trail leading to or from them. They just started in the middle of the yard and ended near the edge of the woods. I looked around. There were no children in this neighborhood. No one outside, and the snow was fresh from overnight, untouched, except for those strange, scattered steps. I brought it up to Miss Darlene that afternoon while shoveling the driveway. Her face dropped instantly. She stopped mid-shovel and looked me dead in the eyes. "You didn't follow them, did you?" she asked. "What?" "No," I replied, laughing nervously. "Good. Don't. And next time, sweep over them fast. Don't let them stay in the snow." She walked away without another word. A week later, I heard it. I was up late reading when a noise caught my attention like dragging. Something moving through the snow just outside my living room window. I turned off the lamp and peeked through the blinds. At first, I saw nothing. Just the soft glow of the street lamps and snowflakes drifting like ash. Then I saw movement near number 19. Something was crawling in the snow. Not walking, crawling. On all fours. It looked like a person, naked, pale, dragging itself slowly across the street. I thought maybe someone was hurt, or drunk, or suffering from hypothermia. Then it stopped. It stood. No struggle. Just straight from all fours to two legs, like a puppet pulled up by strings. And it turned its head. Toward me. Its face was wrong, smooth and flat. Too long. No mouth. It looked at me for several seconds, then ran. I stepped back, heart racing. But it didn't come to my house. It ran straight into the woods, and disappeared. The next morning, I found new footprints outside my door. Bare. Small. And facing the door, like someone had stood there a long time. I started hearing noises inside the walls after that. Scratching. Shifting. Like something moving behind the plaster, dragging itself from room to room. One night I found the attic door open. I don't have an attic door. It was just there, above the hallway. A square hatch I'd never noticed before, with a pull string dangling down. I shut it, but every night after, it was open again. I decided to talk to Walter, the man across the street. He'd lived there longest. Maybe he knew what was going on. When I mentioned the footprints and the thing in the snow, he sighed and looked down. "You've seen them now," he said. "It means they've seen you too." I asked him what they were. "They only come when the snow is fresh and the wind is still," he whispered. "They hate noise. They hate warmth. But mostly they hate being seen." He looked out the window at the falling snow. "That's why no one goes out during the first night of snowfall. That's why we all stay quiet. You broke the rule." "What are they?" I asked again. Walter didn't answer at first. Then he said, "We call them the hollow children. Don't follow their steps. Don't invite them in. And never, never answer a knock after midnight." That night, at 12:17 a.m., I heard knocking. 3 soft taps on my front door. Then silence. I didn't move. Then I heard it again. But this time from inside the house. 3 knocks on my bedroom door. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, frozen, clutching a flashlight like it could help. When dawn came, the knocking stopped. But in the hallway, the attic door was open again. And something had come down. I know because I found wet footprints on the carpet. Bare. Small. Leading from the attic to my room. And they stopped beside my bed. I left the next day. Packed what I could, and got the hell out. I stayed with a friend for weeks. Every time it snowed, I kept my blinds shut, TV off, lights dim. I tried to forget, but I got a call yesterday. The new owner of my house. She found my number in the mailbox. She said she was worried. She asked, "Did you ever hear anything crawling in the attic?" I didn't respond. Then she said, "I found something strange. A photograph under the floorboards. Of children. Pale. Standing in the snow. And one of them looks just like you." I hadn't been back to my childhood home in nearly 15 years. My parents passed within a year of each other, and when I turned 30, the house was left to me. A small wooden house out in rural Maine, surrounded by pines and permafrost, tucked at the end of an unplowed road no one remembered. Growing up, the house always felt too big for the three of us. Or maybe it was just too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. I arrived on a Friday afternoon in late January, planning to stay a few nights and clean it up for potential sale. The snow was relentless, already blanketing the roof and deck in thick layers, and more was forecasted. Perfect timing. The house looked frozen in time. Nothing had changed. Same pale green walls, same creaky wooden porch, same rusted mailbox that used to scare me as a kid because it always looked like it had teeth. Inside was colder than I expected. No heat. I turned on the old boiler system, but it coughed and rattled without much luck. I figured I'd just keep my coat on and make do. I dropped my bags, went upstairs to my old room, and stopped dead in my tracks. Someone had already been there. My childhood room, small, with slanted ceilings and frost-lined windows, was off. All the toys were in the same places I remembered, but too precisely placed. Like someone had studied photos and recreated it. My old bed, twin-sized and wooden, had the exact same navy blue blanket I used as a kid. Even the book on the nightstand was open to the page I always stopped at. And the strangest part, there were tiny boot prints in the dust near the bed. They were too small to be mine. That night, the temperature dropped to near zero. I bundled under layers and tried to ignore how wrong everything felt. At some point, I drifted into a shallow sleep. Then I heard it, crunching, outside. At first, I thought it was wind snapping branches, but it was rhythmic, like footsteps, heavy ones. Someone was walking through the snow around the house. I sat up, heart hammering, and checked the window. Visibility was low, but through the flurries, I could make out movement, a tall figure slowly circling the house, dragging something behind it. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The footsteps stopped at the front porch. Then a knock. Not on the door. On the window, the one just beside my bed. 3 sharp knocks. I turned my head slowly, but there was no face. Just a shape, barely visible in the swirling snow, pressing its forehead against the glass. It stayed there for a long time before fading into the dark. The next morning, I found a single, child-sized mitten on the porch. It was stiff, old, and dirty, like it had been buried for years. I picked it up and froze. It was mine. I remembered that mitten. I lost it when I was 8, during the worst snowstorm of my childhood. I'd fallen into a snowdrift near the woods. My dad found me hours later, barely conscious. I looked out toward the tree line, and I saw it, drag marks, just like the ones I'd made that night. Except these led away from the house. I followed the tracks out past the yard into the woods. The forest looked the same, but something felt warped, like it was watching me. About 30 yards in, I saw something jutting out of the snow. A shape, curved, wooden. I brushed away the snow and uncovered an old sled, red, rusted metal runners. Another memory hit me like a freight train. My cousin Levi. He lived with us briefly when I was young. He and I used to sled back there, down a long hill past the tree line. But Levi disappeared one winter night. They said he ran away, that he'd been unhappy. But I remember now, I was with him that night. We were sledding. We heard something in the woods. A voice. I was too scared to go, but Levi wasn't. He said, "It sounds like your mom. I think she's lost." But my mom was inside the house. He followed the voice into the trees. And he never came back. I never told anyone what I'd heard. I was too scared. My parents told the cops he ran off. But I always knew that wasn't true. And now, here I was, staring at the same sled he rode that night, half buried, frozen solid. Next to it, fresh drag marks in the snow. I ran back to the house, heart pounding. That night, it came back. This time, the door opened by itself. A gust of wind blew in, flurries swirling across the floor like ash. And in the center of the doorway stood a figure, tall, pale, eyes sunken deep into a face that didn't match any human I'd ever seen. It wore tattered winter clothes, and it held something. A photo. My photo. Me and Levi on the sled, smiling. The thing dropped the picture on the floor, then pointed to the woods with one long, shaking finger. And it whispered, "You forgot him." I slammed the door. The next morning, the picture was gone, but the footprints weren't. Small ones, leading from my bed, to the front door, and out, like a child had walked barefoot through the house. I left that day. I didn't clean the house. I didn't pack. I just got in my car and drove. But I can still hear the crunch of snow at night sometimes. And when I sleep, I dream of a little boy's voice calling my name from the woods.